I'm David from Levika Photography, and today I bring you the Tamron 28-75mm F2.8 XD DI3 whatever. Yeah. So anyway, you guys know that I am not a fan of zooms, but this one has been intriguing ever since its announcement last year. And when I was down in Photo Plus about a month ago, I got a chance to really sit down and play with one of these, and I was really impressed by it, so I went ahead and bought one. So this is my own. I own a zoom. Now, you know how much I hate zooms, but I own this one. So I can be completely fair and unbiased about it because I don't care. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into this. So I wanted to review this last year, but I just didn't get a chance because of all the firmware issues. I just kind of stayed clear of it. But now I think they have everything resolved. This thing has 15 elements in 12 groups. It has a 9-bladed rounded aperture, which is good for bokeh. And it also has a 67mm front thread for standard filters. And it only comes in at 19 ounces, so basically like a pound and a half, somewhere around there. Not even that. It's really light. It actually has a weather sealing gasket on it. That's this thing. But anyway, the body itself is actually made out of plastic. It's a good plastic. I mean, it's really light. I don't mind this being made out of plastic at all because it keeps the weight down. This is a really, really light lens, and it's really well balanced on the A7R III. Now, all you have is a manual focus ring if you need to use it, and then, of course, your actual zoom. And then on the front, you'll notice that the front element does not rotate during zooming, so that's good if you're using polarizers. And I didn't really find this to have much in the way of focus breathing either, because I know a lot of you guys are going to ask about that. Ooh, look, it was designed in Japan, but it wasn't made there. It was made in China. So now for the current firmware update, December 2018. So just so you know, that's what's current. Now, the good thing about this firmware is that it works perfectly on not only the A7R III, but all the way back to my A7R. And it gives you full phase detection on the A6000, A6300. The Tamron is mounted on the A6000. I just wanted to show you guys this because now you can see all the happy little focusing squares. So phase detection fully works across the entire screen on the A6000. So that means it's going to work on everything. Now the thing with this that makes it so good is the quality of glass that you have in this. And this is really the trend that lenses are going in. The lenses that are showing to have the best performance are getting just phenomenal glass in them. And for 800 bucks, you cannot go wrong with this. It has 2 spherical hybrid elements, and then it has 1 molded aspherical element, and then 1 low distortion element, and then it's got 1 extra low dispersion element. So basically, chromatic aberrations almost don't exist on this. And it's true. They really don't. Everything on this seems to be extremely well controlled. If you're going to spend $1,500 on a zoom lens, it should at least perform as well as the medium prime that it falls in. So in this case, this one's 28-75. So at 50, it should perform at least as good as a 50mm prime. Now this one does. But a lot of lenses that I've tested in the past, especially zoom lenses, don't. And you really have to step them down. And that's one of the major disappointments and the reasons why I don't like zooms. When you have a zoom and you're actually zooming out, this action right here is physically stretching the elements out, creating space between the elements. That's how you're actually zooming. So of course that's going to hurt image quality. And on this one, it's no different, but it's better controlled. Let's take a look at optical quality. Now this is why I really don't like zoom lenses, but this one actually performs decently, although it might not look like it at first, but we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, this is what lens at 28mm at f2.8 looks like with lens corrections turned off in the camera. Everything's turned off. So this is what it looks like with them turned on. And it does a pretty good job fixing the distortion. It's really not too bad at all.
And again, this is at 28mm. Now I'm not going to take you through every f-stop. I'm just going to bounce ahead here. But anyway, we have F2.8 in this first box, F5.6 in this box, F11 over here, and this is F22 over here. But let's go ahead and zoom into the center of it, and we'll just go down to the top of the color box. Now you'll see at 28mm at F2.8, the center of this lens is really sharp. We're talking about 4,200 lines of resolution in the center all the way open at F2.8. Now this is at 28mm, but that is pretty much outstanding. By F5.6, where it gets its sharpest, it actually does a pretty good job at 4,400 lines of resolution. And then at F11, this is where the corners get really sharp. And before we show you the corners, at F22, diffraction is completely set in, but it's still totally usable, which is very impressive. And keep in mind, when you're looking at these images, I have the sharpening in my camera turned completely off. So there is no extra sharpening going on here at all. Now let's look at the extreme corners. Just not good at F2.8. And by F5.6, you can see there's a coma issue going on. So no, you cannot use this lens for shooting stars. It's just not going to be great. But by F11, a lot of that is starting to be cleaned up. And these are just little speckles of light in the paper that I'm picking up here. And at F22, again, it's not great, but it's still usable. At 50mm, which is pretty much the sweet spot of this lens, if we zoom into the center of it, you're going to see, again, huge amounts of resolution. I mean, this thing is just really, really sharp. And at F11, at 50mm, diffraction is starting to set in again. F5.6 is its sharpest f-stop in the center. F22 is really actually pretty impressive on this lens, I have to admit. Alright, so now this is at 70mm, 75mm. If we zoom in at 75, again you'll see F2.8 totally usable, not super sharp, but pretty good. By F5.6, it's extremely sharp. And at 75mm, F11 is holding up really well too. And F22 again is just really solid. So if we look at the extreme corners here, that's pretty much what we're looking at 75. So again at F2.8 it's a little bit soft, 5.6 it's coming together, F11 it's just razor sharp, and F22 again is totally usable. Distortion at 70mm. Now at 50mm this is almost kind of flat and it doesn't have a lot of distortion, but at 70mm or 75, distortion with lens correction turned off in the camera again is kind of extreme the other way. It's got kind of a pincushion effect. So this is with lens correction turned off at 70mm, and this is with it turned on. You can see it flattens out fairly nicely. Not 100% perfectly straight, but either is my picture. Alright, so this is with lens correction turned off again, and this is what the vignetting looks like at f2.8. This is with correction turned on. So you can see that it doesn't fix it completely, but it does a better job of evening it out. I just wish it did a little bit better job than this. But still, not bad. So anyway, let's go outside and use this and see what this thing actually looks like.
So we're out here for Canal Convergence and we're trying out the Tamron 28-75. There's going to be probably a little bit of noise in these shots because no tripod, no flash, but I'll probably shoot at ISO 1600. We have a lot of cool stuff to look at. Well, hello ladies. Let's try some eye focusing.
I just wanted to talk about a few of these images really quick. When I shot these, it was right after I shot the test charts. And I didn't realize that I did not put the camera back on RAW. I still had it in JPEG mode. So, yeah, we get JPEGs. But anyway, overall, no chromatic aberrations. Everything is really sharp. Very clean looking images in general. This particular shot, I wanted to show you a perfect example of shooting at f/22. Now granted, this is on Sony in JPEG, and we've got some long exposure noise reduction going on, which is why the trees look muddled. But I was focused in on this pole, and just really, really clean. If this was in RAW, I could get this image actually seriously sharp. So I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't, but yeah, works at f/22. Same with this one right here. This is also f/22. Excellent contrast, no chromatic aberrations, just a clean image overall. Now in this particular shot, this is 28mm at f2.8. I just wanted to show you again, no chromatic aberrations on the shiny surfaces, and really sharp, wide open. And you know, this is at ISO 800, and I think it's doing it just an amazing job for zoom. Alright, let's talk about bokeh really quick. So the bokeh is strange on this. So I was shooting this tree, and this is at 70mm at f2.8, and we've got perfectly round bokeh balls, but this is a high contrast situation, and we've got this kind of oniony texture going on over here. So that is a little disappointing, but this is only high contrast. In situations where it's low contrast, you can see it's a lot cleaner through here. And those bokeh balls look really good. The only problem is these bokeh balls don't. They got some texture to them, which is really kind of strange. Now again, I was shooting this at like 75mm, and I was focused in on this front snout of this thing, this lantern. And in this photo, same thing. I'm still focused on the same spot, but this time I went wider to 43mm. And the strange thing about this is the shape of our bokeh balls. So what had to have happened is, as I zoomed out a little bit, either the aperture changed or something changed in this situation. But these should be perfectly round. They're just not. I have no idea why. That's really, really unusual. Because I did play with this at different focal lengths, testing bokeh, and I didn't see this when I was doing those tests. But something must have been hung up. Yeah, some of these are just really, really bizarre. Anyway, I'd like to thank my model for the evening. She was excellent. But I just wanted to show you the hair detail. That's actually really, really impressive. Especially for shooting through such a thick glass window to get this shot. You know, overall, I think that this lens is really good for shooting people, but I think we need to compare this to the G Master, so yeah, let's see if we can find a 24-70.
Today we are at Tempe Camera, and I'm here with David, and he's actually letting me borrow, just for a few minutes, the Sony GM 24-70 lens. We're going to compare this directly with the Tamron 28-75. So we're going to see what the image quality is like. Now I'm guessing the GM lens is going to have like almost no vignetting, probably a little better bokeh, but sharpness wise Tamron may have it. I don't know.
Maybe pretty close.
Yeah, but anyway, this will resolve a lot of questions that you guys are going to ask me, because I know you're going to ask me. So we're just going to do some quick tests, nothing crazy, but just something that way we can tell the difference between the two. So let's get started.
So I took 150 photos, but I narrowed it down to just these few. That way I didn't drag this out for too long. So let me just go ahead and do a quick comparison. Now this is the outside of Tempe Camera, obviously, and I just wanted to show you that these are at their widest apertures and at their widest focal lengths. So the GM at 24 and the Tamron at 28. Now if you zoom in here, you can tell both are equally sharp in the center. Not really a huge difference between the two. And if we zoom out, the biggest thing I can tell you about this photo is if we go into the extreme corners down here. If we go into the extreme corners, you'll see that the GM lens is definitely holding up better than the Tamron at its widest setting at 24mm. So that's pretty impressive on the GM's part. Looking at this lower corner, at this flare right here, you can see that the Tamron's more pronounced. If you look at the actual flaring coming off of here, let me just get rid of the EXIF data, then there really isn't a huge difference between the two. They pretty much look the same. In this particular shot, these two lenses are set in the middle of their zoom range. The f-stop is 7.1, so we should see some really good sharpness, and if we zoom in here, we do. So let me go to the extreme corners here. Is that if you look down here, you'll notice that the GM holds up just a hair better than the Tamron does at this focal length in the extreme corners. Again, on APS-C size, you're not going to notice this. That'll be cut off. Now, in this particular shot, I just wanted to show you kind of the difference between the bokeh of the two. But what I wanted to look at here was the bokeh of the trees behind it. And you'll notice that even though the GM lens, it's wider, so it doesn't have quite the shallow depth of field that the 28 does, because the 28 is a slightly longer focal length, but the busyness of the 28, all the little microcircles that actually form this, means that the bokeh is not quite as soft as the GM, and you'll see it in the next photo. Now in this shot I got a little lower, I got a little closer just to see exactly what the bokeh looked like, and you'll notice that there seems to be just slightly deeper depth of field on the GM lens, but as far as sharpness goes, if you look at this petal here and this petal here, they're pretty much the same. Can't really tell the difference between the two, but the background, you can see it here, it's just slightly smoother on the GM lens, but not much. Alright, now what I wanted to show you here was, again, I'm standing at the same distance and I just zoomed in on this door and took a shot on both with lens corrections turned on, and you'll notice that this one's at 67, this one's at 63, and they both look about the same. And if we zoom in here, you'll see the sharpness is pretty much about the same as well. Maybe in this shot the Tamron might be slightly sharper. Lens correction wise, they both look pretty good. Alright, so in this shot you're seeing the GM over here and the Tamron over here, and what you're seeing is lens corrections turned off. In this shot you'll notice that both of them have barrel distortion and both of them have vignetting in the corners, and there really isn't a difference between the two. Then this is what we get. So in this setting, the Tamron still has a little bit more of a vignetting problem than the GM does. The corners are way lighter on the GM. Again, this is with distortion control turned off. But if you zoom in here, you'll notice that the Tamron at 28mm, and I was focusing in on this pole, is slightly sharper. Okay, again, this is at 51 and 52mm, so pretty close. And what I wanted to show you again was the sharpness, and it looks like the Tamron in this situation is maybe slightly sharper. It's hard to say, can't tell. But what I wanted to show you was this is with distortion control turned off, and they both had this kind of very slight pincushion effect going on here. So it's just a trait of both lenses. And then at their most telephoto setting, zoomed all the way in, you'll notice that they both have a pincushion effect, and again there's more vignetting on the Tamron than there is on the GM lens. But when you zoom in here, you'll notice that the Tamron is sharper at 75mm than the Sony is at 70. And this is again all the way up wide open at f2.8. Just to make this point stick, this is David from Tempe Camera, the guy that's letting me do this with this comparison with these lenses. I just want to take his portrait really quick just to see what it looked like. And if we zoom in here, you'll see that especially on his eyeglasses, the dust and everything that you can pick up, the Tamron's definitely sharper. So, you know, even in his hair, you You can see right here it's really crisp and clean. Eyebrows, mustache. So there you go. In this point, I'd have to say that the Tamron telephoto wise is better, but the GM at the wide angle side is better. It's pretty obvious that the GM lens is slightly bigger than the Tamron, and it's also a little heavier, about 2 ounces heavier, so it's not a huge deal. But the weirdest thing is that the zoom and manual focus rings are swapped on these lenses, so it gets a little confusing.
There are a couple of features that I didn't mention when I was actually shooting this outside that the GM has. It's got a lock button to keep the lens closed down to 24. And not just that, but if you go over to the side of it, you've got an AF manual focus switch, and then you've got the button. And the button, especially for wedding photographers, if you don't want to use the back of your camera, on my A7R III, I actually use the AEL button as my eye focusing button. But on this one, you can completely assign the button to that too,
cool.
which is actually kind of nice. And I think that's the only other feature on it. Pretty much the same thing. Now this one, just so you know, the G Master is not weather sealed. It may be dust and moisture resistant on the outside,
Ish.
but it doesn't have the gasket on the butt.
Right, right.
Now the only other major flaw about this is lens hood. The lens hood, it fits fine and it goes on and clicks on, but you're going to find this floating around in your camera bag quite a bit. And the reason why is there's this massive air gap on both sides, and just walking by something, you can just pop it right off. And I can't tell you how many times I've walked by a chair with my camera hanging down and it's just popped off. So that is really annoying. Overall, I think this is just a really good lens. It is as sharp as most primes in their focal lengths on this, but it's not as sharp as the sharpest primes that I have. But it is pretty damn close. Bokeh-wise, it's just a little harsh, but it's not bad. But outside of that, everything else about it's just really good. The autofocus is fast, it's quiet, it works great in video. I don't really see any issues with it. It's because of the plastic, it makes it a lot lighter, which I prefer. Just really impressed by it. I mean, it is really good for 800 bucks. You cannot go wrong. So anyway, I hope you guys liked this review. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe to my channel for more information like this, and we'll talk to you guys later. We'll see ya.